From the very beginning, the Beatles have stood as one of the most influential music acts in history. Their impact spans across generations and genres, inspiring legends like Ozzy Osbourne and contemporary icons such as Taylor Swift. The Gallagher brothers from Northern England are also part of this long list of admirers. Fans of Oasis can clearly hear the Beatles' fingerprints on the Manchester band's sound, and both Liam and Noel Gallagher have openly shared their deep appreciation and respect for the Fab Four. Unfortunately, that admiration wasn't always mutual. During the height of Oasis's fame, George Harrison and Paul McCartney shared their views on the group, and they didn't hold back. Oasis dominated the music scene in the 1990s, being hailed as the most significant British band since the Beatles. While the group basked in that spotlight, not everyone welcomed the comparisons. In a documentary about Oasis, both Harrison and McCartney were asked for their opinions on the band and their supposed similarities to the Beatles. Harrison offered a blunt critique, saying the band's music lacked substance and that Liam Gallagher, in particular, was difficult to tolerate. He also commented that the rest of the band didn't actually need Liam. His remarks caused a stir, but weren't entirely out of character, as Harrison was known for his sharp tongue. What truly surprised fans, however, was Paul McCartney's response. Known for his typically diplomatic tone, his unexpectedly negative stance came as a shock. Years later, McCartney clarified what had prompted his critical remarks. Speaking on The Howard Stern Show, he explained that his initial reaction had been supportive, wishing Oasis well and acknowledging how tough the industry can be for young bands. However, his attitude shifted when Oasis began speaking unfavorably about the Beatles. McCartney was referring specifically to a comment made by Nol Gallagher, who once claimed that Oasis was better than the Beatles. Noel would later admit he had only said that because he was under the influence at the time and regretted making the statement. McCartney acknowledged that Oasis had been a fresh, talented band writing strong material, but noted that their biggest mistake was claiming they would surpass the Beatles. He clarified that his objection wasn't based on the belief that the Beatles were unbeatable, but rather on the idea that such bold declarations trap newer artists into impossible comparisons that follow them throughout their careers. Despite his earlier frustration, McCartney eventually softened his stance on Oasis. A full decade before any reunion talks began, he had already expressed interest in seeing the group reunite, hoping they would come together to create more great music, knowing fans would eagerly embrace it. McCartney wasn't the only one to move past the rivalry. In 2021, during a screening of The Beatles' Get Back, a documentary by Peter Jackson, Noel Gallagher revisited those early comparisons and retracted his earlier claims. He explained that in the beginning, Oasis had grown so large that they were being likened to the Beatles both in popularity and musical style, something he now finds cringeworthy. He admitted that such comparisons were misplaced, acknowledging that the Beatles held an unmatched place in his heart and musical journey. While both bands are remarkable in their own ways, they occupied distinct chapters in the history of rock music. Oasis dominated the 1990s and continue to be relevant, as evidenced by the overwhelming success of their reunion tours. But the Beatles exist in an entirely different league. Their contributions fundamentally reshaped the landscape of rock and roll. As Noel Gallagher himself once said, every artist who came after them was touched by their influence in some form. Even now, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, both well into their 80s, continue to break new ground. McCartney has announced an upcoming North American tour, while Starr is working on fresh material for a new album. With the arrival of new Beatles biopics, younger generations will discover or rediscover the legendary band. And so, it's safe to say that it may be a very long time before anyone challenges the Beatles' title as the greatest rock band the world has ever known.